Hello, welcome back to Indus News with me, Osman Lone. Well, we begin this hour with our top story, and that's Prime Minister Imran Khan says Pakistan has been unfairly blamed for the United States' failures in Afghanistan. In a television interview, Khan said Pakistan has lost 70,000 lives and incurred over $100 billion worth of losses after it joined Washington's war on terror. PM Khan says Pakistan would not have been called the world's most dangerous country if it had not taken part in the war. He said that terror groups turned against Pakistan after it joined US-led global campaign against terrorism. PM Khan says after suffering great losses, Pakistan is blamed for the Americans not succeeded in Afghanistan. Well, in Afghanistan, 4 Afghan soldiers have been killed by a suicide attack in Kabul. The Afghan Defense Ministry says 3 others were wounded when a vehicle packed with explosives blew up near a military base. Claiming the responsibility, the Taliban say they targeted 200 commandos deployed at the base in southern Kabul. Prime Minister Imran Khan welcomes the EU's call in the UN Human Rights Council for a peaceful solution to the Kashmir dispute. Khan lauded the 58 countries that demanded India to stop the use of force, lift the siege and respect Kashmiri's human rights. Earlier in an interview, Pakistan Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said India's claim of normalcy in occupied Kashmir has been exposed at international forums. Qureshi said New Delhi is trying to mislead the world, but the voice raised for Kashmiris by Pakistan has exposed its lies. He said the Indian clampdown has created shortages of food and medicine in occupied Kashmir. Qureshi said the world has taken note of India's denial of Kashmiris' right to freely practice religion. Now, staying with Kashmir, an Indian-American Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal has expressed concern over the alarming human rights situation in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Along with Congressman James P. McGovern, she urged US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to press India to end the ongoing curfew there. In a letter, Pramila Jayapal and James P. McGovern called for India's communications blackout to be lifted and the release of persons detained by occupation forces. The politicians said Indian forces have arrested thousands in Kashmir since August 5th, including minors. The lawmakers sought international media and independent human rights observers access to occupied territories to probe reports of human rights abuses. The United Nations has warned Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu against his plan to annex parts of the Jordan Valley. UN Chief Antonio Guterres says the proposed plan is a serious violation of international law. Guterres says the annexation will be illegal and undermine the prospects for regional peace. He says it will weaken the visibility of a two-state solution for the Israel-Palestine conflict. Earlier, Prime Minister Netanyahu said he will impose Israeli sovereignty on the Jordan Valley and northern Dead Sea if he's re-elected. Meanwhile, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation has called an emergency meeting to discuss Tel Aviv's escalations. Now, in Brexit and the UK government, it's published Operation Yellowhammer. It's a detailed report planning for a no-deal Brexit. It outlines a series of reasonable worst-case scenarios for the impact of a crash-out on October 31st. More in this report.
The folder of UK government papers has warned of extreme risks from the looming no-deal Brexit. Operation Yellowhammer outlines possibilities that include shortages of food and medicine, along with panic buying. The report says British citizens could be subject to increased immigration checks at EU border posts. Cabinet Minister Michael Gove says the assumptions in the document are being reviewed.
The Yellowhammer documents are a worst-case scenario. They're produced so that government can take plans and take steps in order to mitigate any of those consequences. And over the course of the last 6 weeks, this government has taken considerable steps in order to ensure that if there is a no-deal scenario, that we can leave in the safest and smoothest possible way.
Defence Minister Ben Wallace says the government is taking measures to mitigate the effects of a no deal.
There are certainly going to be impacts, but what we want to make sure is that the impacts are not in the hard end or the extreme, and where we feel there is an impact that can be easily mitigated or can be mitigated, we shall seek to do.
Opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn called out Prime Minister Boris Johnson for putting citizens at risk. Shadow Brexit Secretary Sir Keir Starmer says Parliament should be recalled to scrutinise the documents. But Brexit Party leader Nigel Farage dismissed the talk of mayhem.
The idea, given there are over 100 ports, active ports, in the United Kingdom, that even if there was a problem at Dover, there'd be food shortages, is complete and utter rubbish. It's Project Fear, Mark II. It should be utterly, completely, totally disregarded.
In releasing the document, Michael Gove was following an order from Parliament, but he ignored a second order to publish the opinions of government advisers about the suspension of Parliament.
Now, the US Supreme Court has approved the Trump administration's plan to limit the ability of migrants to claim asylum. Under the rule, people arriving through a third country must claim asylum there first, before reaching the US border. The plan will affect migrants from Central America who head north through Mexico. Curbing migration levels has been a key goal of President Donald Trump and forms a major part of his bid for re-election in 2020. Trump has called the Supreme Court ruling a big win for his border on asylum plan.
They want to have open borders, and open borders mean crime, and open borders mean people drowning in the rivers, and it's a very dangerous thing.
Now, in a related development, US lawmakers have condemned the government's new policy of deporting sick immigrants receiving medical care. 130 Democratic senators and Congress members have sent protest letters to the government calling the move cruel and inhumane. In August, the US Immigration Service gave people in this category 1 month's notice to leave the country.
We should be compassionate and do the right thing. We should help those in need. The question, though, is that we are a nation of laws. We're a nation of sovereignty, and we are willing. And, what question I think is important to ask is, are we willing to send a clear message of what those laws are and then figure out how to navigate within a system of rule of laws?
Germany has offered to conduct a conference about the situation in Libya in conjunction with the United Nations. It's a bid to stabilize the oil-producing country where rival factions have been fighting over the capital. Berlin's ambassador to Libya, Oliver Auswa, says the plan is in its early stages. He said this will be the first major diplomatic push since the opening of an offensive by eastern forces loyal to Khalifa Haftar in April. Earlier, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said the Libyan situation risks destabilizing the whole of Africa. She told the Bundestag that Berlin will do its part to avoid a proxy war inside Libya. Sudan's ruling council says the government and armed groups have agreed to hold peace talks next month. It's a key condition for the country's removal from the US sponsors of terrorism list. In a declaration issued after talks in South Sudan's capital Juba, the council said peacemaking with rebels is one of its main priorities. Sudan's government and rebel groups have also agreed to form specialized committees to arrange for peace negotiations. The council says it will follow procedures to release prisoners of war. Sudanese officials and rebels signed the initial agreement in front of diplomats to set a 2-month period for talks. Thousands of people have been killed in Sudan's civil wars, including the conflict in the western Darfur region. In Nigeria, Boko Haram has killed 9 soldiers in an attack on a military base in the town of Gudumbali in the northern state of Borno. The security officials say 27 other soldiers are still missing. The Nigerian army says security forces countered the militants and repelled the attack. A decade-long insurgency in Nigeria has claimed over 30,000 lives so far. Now, 2,500 people are still missing a week after Hurricane Dorian struck the Bahamas. The Category 5 storm killed 50 people in the Caribbean islands. Addressing the nation, Bahamian Prime Minister Hubert Minnis called the hurricane a national tragedy. Minister said the death toll is expected to rise further.
Many are in despair, wondering if their loved ones are still alive. The official death count in the Bahamas as of the 9th of September is 42 in Abaco and 8 in Grand Bahama, for a total of 50 people. There are many who are still missing. The number of deaths is expected to significantly increase.
Well, we'll be back with more news and stories from around the world after this short break. Hello and welcome back to Indus News. Now, concerns are mounting for businesses as the trade war between China and the United States goes on with no end in sight. US ginseng producers who are attending the second China International Import Expo, China International Import Expo, are hoping to find new opportunities there. More in this report.
The trade dispute between the US and China has undermined ginseng exports. The rich soil of Marathon County in the American state of Wisconsin is perfect for growing a range of crops, including the herb. Ginseng can take 5 years to cultivate and harvest, making it hard for farmers to react to changes in the market. But tough times have not put farmers off from looking for new outlets.
About 50% of crop from last year is still on the market, and we have a new crop coming up in about 4 to 6 weeks. So it has been a hard time for ginseng farmers here.
For many farmers, like Jiang, taking part in the expo is still an important part of their long-term strategy. Farmers are pushing for an even larger exhibition stand to include goods from other producers in Wisconsin.
Our business model has always been to bring the best from Wisconsin or US to China, and that model will stay despite the temporary hiccup.
Growers hope this expo can help open new avenues and help the whole of Wisconsin.
Italy's Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte has asked for the EU's fiscal forbearance to revive economic growth in the country. Conte has met the bloc's top officials to win support for his plan to revive investment inside the country. On his first visit to Brussels since retaking office, Conte repeated a lenient interpretation of EU fiscal rules. He met the EU Council President Donald Tusk, Parliament President David Sassoli and Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. Conte expressed his intention to invest in Italy's green economy, digitalization and its impoverished south. The country came under pressure in June when its budget plan was assessed to be in breach of EU regulations. Now, astronomers say the exoplanet K2-18b has become the first planet to have both water and a temperature similar to planet Earth's. These two factors could support life on the planet. K2-18b orbits a star outside the solar system and has 8 times the mass of Earth. This is the first successful discovery of water and atmosphere temperatures on an exoplanet. Now, most people choose to pass the time on their smartphones when using public transport. But if you're in Kazan, Russia, you may come across a tram driver who sings to you as she drives, giving you onboard entertainment at no additional cost. More in this report. Tram driver Elzida Hafizova says she sings whenever she can, even at work. Her repertoire includes Tatar pop and folk songs, as well as some tunes she wrote herself.
My soul wants it. I do not sing at work only. I do it at home and everywhere, even when I speak on a phone.
Far from being disturbed by Hafizova's singing, her passengers say she actually brightens up their day.
Let her sing. What's the problem? Let her get paid more for this. She sings, she entertains people, but she also has hard work.
Hafizofa's been driving a tram for 2 years now, but singing since she was 3. She calls her singing habit a gift from God. In other news, Hong Kong has put on a glittering lantern and light show to mark its Mid-Autumn Festival. The show, featuring more than just lanterns and lights, has drawn huge crowds. More in this report.
The radiant luster of a golden dragon marks the beginning of this year's celebration. A fiery, auspicious phoenix and beguiling dancing dragons hover over the bright and alluring parks. Festival food and drinks, especially traditional mooncakes and teas, are sold.
Every year, the lanterns at the Victoria Park are the best in Hong Kong. Parks in other places also have such beautiful scenery. Children are always happy during the Mid-Autumn Festival because they can eat mooncakes and visit lantern shows, said a local resident.
The local Chinese residents now have a golden opportunity to celebrate the traditional significance of the Moon Festival.
The reunion between people is just like a round full moon. I hope we can all have a fresh prospect and our society a brand new start, just like China, which is in the middle of a great era.
The festival highlights the necessity of preserving cultural moments for future generations.
Now in business news, Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing has proposed a $39 billion takeover of the London Stock Exchange. The proposal will require the LSE to give up its acquisition of data company Refinitiv. The LSE says it will review the offer but is committed to acquiring Refinitiv. The Hong Kong-based company's proposal comes as Britain is set to leave the European Union. It says the offer represents a 23% premium on the LSE's closing stock price on Tuesday. European stock markets are trading marginally higher as investors await European Central Bank's announcement of economic stimulus measures. Bourses have also been supported by a reduction in tensions between the US and China after they withheld the imposition of new tariffs. Investors are widely anticipating a significant package of monetary stimulus from the ECB. London's FTSE 100 and the DAX in Frankfurt are fractionally up, while Paris's CAC index is down slightly. Earlier, most stock markets in Asia gained on optimism about trade talks between Washington and Beijing. Well, it's 34 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all from me and the team here in Lahore. We'll be back at the top of the headlines with the headlines. Bye-bye.